Hi everyone. So what is important that we are discussing Mount Moriah, and because Mount Moriah on the Temple Mount, we are not allowed to conduct any archaeological excavations. We only have the territory around the Temple Mount. However, we need to keep in mind that the original Temple Mount is much smaller than what we have nowadays. So Mount Moriah looks more like a hump, and it did look more like a hump between the two valleys, the Tyropoeon Valley, and the Kidron Valley. And that's exactly where the first temple was built by Solomon, right, in 900 BCE. So we don't really have any depiction of the temple from those times. So we have renderings that were made over the course of these centuries. So, but what we know for sure is that the first temple was much smaller than and the Temple Mount was way smaller than it is today. 586 BCE, we know the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, by Nebuchadnezzar, and shortly after that, thanks to King Cyrus, the Jews were able to go back after the Babylonian exile, go back to Jerusalem, and then the temple was rebuilt within so-called 50 years. It was very modest and definitely, well, not everyone was happy about it, but well, I guess in given circumstances, they just came up with the best they could. But further on, the second temple, the Zerubbabel's temple, was rebuilt by King Herod the Great in the first century BCE. And well, it's important to remember that I would say, in Christian narrative, Herod was, well, the one who wanted to kill Jesus, right? Baby Jesus, the one who arranged this massacre of the innocents. So yeah, Herod was in the Christian narrative is clearly a very negative character. In Jewish narrative, it's a little bit more complicated because Herod, with all his mental issues, let's put it mildly like that, definitely is known as the great builder of the Holy Land. And first and foremost, yeah, also we have seen quite a number of his uh, palaces, his residences. Well, he also extended the Temple Mount, and also rebuilt the temple. So now, basically, this hump of the Mount Moriah got enlarged with the land that was filled up from this side, and now the outline that we have exactly today in the well, in Jerusalem, that's exactly the outline of the expanded Temple Mount. It was filled up, and on top of it, the temple was built. Um, it's important to understand that the level of the ground nowadays is very different from what it was 2000 years ago in terms of Herod. We saw, however, the original ground level in the Davidson Center, right? You remember the area with the base of the arch, of the Robinson's Arch, named after the archaeologist who discovered the elements of the arch. So this is the original ground level. We walk the paved street, and that's exactly the street on which Jesus also walked. Like, he must have walked it. There's no way he hadn't walked it. Let's put it this way. So this is the the west and the south corner of the Western Wall, which you can see in the Davidson Center. And this is the praying plaza. So this is the modern day ground level, right? You can see it, and this is all underground. That's exactly the layer we can only see thanks to the tours of the Western Wall tunnels, which you can access from the Praying Plaza. Another visual aid, which I think is very much is really helpful. So that's we can see the modern day level and the level of the past. Yeah, I guess that explains a lot. You know, I use various sources for visual aids. So I use a lot of visual aids from the Holy Land website. So this is a good resource. First of all, obviously for Christians, but in general, the information they provide and the visuals they have are quite reliable. I also use several other sources, the Median Institute with the Jewish studies, and obviously the City of David Foundation, and a couple others. That's what I rely on in my work. Uh, this helps a lot. We understand where we are. So this is the praying plaza. We have walked around it. We have already dived into the tunnels. We've seen quite a lot, and we also saw the area that was exposed basically, and became available to visitors only starting from last year. So a bit over a year altogether, and we are now here in this area. We have already, that's how we entered, and that's where we've been. This is the area where the fountains were found, and the showers for the purification from the Roman times. That's, yeah, the Roman times. Before the destruction, so while there were still Jews and Romans living together in the city, and now we are here. So where are we? This is just a quick reminder because the stones are quite important. So we are underground, right? These are the stones of the Temple Mount. And once you see the stone clear cut shape with the frame, with a rectangular frame, you know this is the Herodian stone. I showed it last time, so I'm not going to be stopping here, but there are four gigantic stones placed in the foundations of the Temple Mount, Western Wall. There must be same stones also from the other four sides, but there are no access to them, so there just haven't been excavations there. Well, technically speaking, from the eastern side, there is a natural terrain, so we don't, and the bedrock, so we don't expect to have such stones from that side. But there haven't been any excavations carried out whatsoever, so we don't know. So what we know is what we have here. So we have four gigantic stones that are way bigger, 100 times bigger than the biggest stones in the pyramids. So that's still a big question, how these stones were placed there, because they were not quarried exactly on the spot. There would have been traces of the quarry, and we have quarries around here, but not the quarries of this size. So this is just one stone, and it's been here ever since Herod's times. And the holes and the wooden the beams that you see sticking out from the wall, they are clearly from the further times, because when the city was destroyed by Romans in 135, they rebuilt it. They placed new buildings here, atop the destruction, and they just couldn't destroy. They just couldn't get rid of these gigantic walls of the temple. The temple itself was destroyed in 70 AD. And then in 135 AD, after the Bar Kokhba revolt, another and the last Jewish revolt against the Romans. So it was decided to basically raise Jerusalem to the ground and rebuild it anew into a pagan city. And but these stones, they couldn't do anything with them, so they basically built on top of it and attach the walls of the new city to these walls that are not going anywhere. As I said, it's still quite we don't know how these stones were placed here, but they were placed with a great skill. But with regards to smaller stones, we have an idea of how these stones were cut. We know of several quarries in the vicinity of the Temple Mount, so we know from where these stones were taken. That's Jerusalem stone, which is everywhere in Jerusalem. And this is I would say, very simple, very understandable technology that they use to deliver the stones. And we have an idea of how the stones would be also lifted up. There would be a ramp filled up with the ground. And also with the stones, there would be this kind of wooden wheels, which would definitely enable a much easier lifting up the ramp. So, but again, you can see the master courses of the biggest stones are way too big. So that's quite complicated. We don't know how these four big stones were placed here. Uh, only only assumptions. Only assumptions. That is it. So, where we have been so far, the filled up gates, right? So you can see here, this is soil. This is not stone. They used to be the gates. And we spoke about them in detail last time. But so this is the ramp, right? There was the Wilson's Arch. We were there last time. Then beside the Wilson's Arch, these gigantic stones, right? The master courses are. And then, well, there was this hole, a hollowing filled up with the ground. That's another gate. So technically speaking, if you just push through the break through this wall, you'll find yourself on the Temple Mount, which we cannot do because it's a big no-no. But that's so-called Warren's Gate because the archaeologist who was sent here by Queen Victoria, as well as Wilson, they discovered it and it's named after him. And these gates, because it is very close to the temple and the Holy of the Holies, there was an assumption that this gate was used by the priestly family, and that was so-called of a very VIP entrance only for those who had access to the temple. And we have a rendering from the Holy Land site, so how this Warren's Gate could look like. But again, it's just an assumption. That's where we are, Warren's Gate, you see? It's very close. It's one of the closest places, one of the closest areas to the Holy of Holies, but there is even a closer one. That's exactly where we stopped last time. So there is so-called a prayer nook. It's sort of a makeshift synagogue. You can even see the clitolux here, right? The small notes with the prayers that people try to put in the cracks between the wall, between the stones. And as you can see, the stones are put so close to one another. It's almost seamless, right? Sometimes it's impossible even to put the credit card in between the stones. That's the incredible mason work that we have. So this place is considered to be the closest to the Holy of Holies, so approximately 60 meters, 200 feet. And that's where you are most likely to see people standing, praying, sitting. And this is not my photos, they're just photos from the internet. And that's, because this is the closest a Jew can get to where the temple used to be and where the Hall of the Holies used to be. And from now on, we are entering the so-called Northern Passage. As you remember, this is not the lowest level. Before this tour, we visited the level below this one. That's exactly where we saw the remnants of the Roman theater that was built after the destruction of Jerusalem. And part of the stones in the construction of the theater were actually the stones from the Temple Mount. And we also understand that, so if that over there is the ground level for the pagan times Jerusalem, then, clearly that the pagan Jerusalem, Aelia Capitolina, was built atop the destruction level. So what they basically did, Emperor Hadrian told the soldiers to just erase the city, and what they did, they just filled everything up. So with this construction of the pagan city, yeah, okay, definitely they totally disregarded, disgraced, and abused the city of Jerusalem, but they also preserved it by building the city atop of it. So technically speaking, if you dig there and you dig and you dig, you'll see a lot more. So, and definitely that would be even the first temple period uh, artifacts. Technically speaking, they should be there. They should be there. So, but uh, as of now, that's what we have, which is already quite a lot. And we are now walking in the Northern Passage. I obviously cut out the boring parts, but everywhere you walk here, you definitely need to look around and definitely look where you step, because where there you go. There is this windows, and you can see again, you can see the clear cut edges. That's the Herodian stones, and these are the stones that would be falling from the top of the Temple Mount on the ground and would crash. And they're here, so because what else could the Romans do? They were so heavy they couldn't really carry them, so they just filled everything up. That was it. We move on and we walk along the Herodian stones. Another another uh, hollowing. We can see how much lower we can see. There is a one, two, three layers. So and these are the very big Herodian stones. You can see that. And we go on. So altogether, that's about maybe 10 minutes walk. It's really hard to tell. And as you go to the left-hand side, there would be two cisterns of different periods. How do we know they're cisterns? Well, because there definitely would be a hole in the arch in the ceiling. Jerusalem had basically one source of water, right? The Gihon spring. Even nowadays, the water supply company is the Gihon water supply company. So not much really, well, much has changed, but international, that's the only natural source of water to Jerusalem. So that's why every drop of rainwater mattered. So whenever you see plaster on the walls in different caves and different construction, underground constructions, well, we can say that this was done. They just try to seal the walls to store water, and yeah, that's how the water would be collected. And also that's one of the systems, and the other system from a later, much later period. Uh, that's from the around 14th century. Um, well, around the Ottoman times, and it looks a bit better. So the plaster has been better preserved because it's kind of fresher. It's also that's from the 14th century cistern. Everywhere here, this is the Muslim quarter that has a very dense construction. There's nowhere you can dig in the Muslim quarter, and everywhere in the Muslim quarter, people live just like as everywhere else. There are religious facilities and just residential areas. And Muslim quarter, being the biggest, is the most challenging. It would be the most challenging for excavations anyway. So we are here, and as you see here, the road turns a little bit. Let's see what we've got. Let's see what we've got. Um, this is the photo from the video you can watch in the Western Wall tunnels. This is the exposed area of the praying plaza. That's the Sissy, we are going to have a Q&A in I would say roughly 8 minutes. So that's when I will gladly answer your questions. If there's any technical issues, please let me know in the DMs. Well, Sharon, I know I can always rely on you just in case, or Dorley. But we go on. So this is this famous Wilson's Arch. We saw the arch with you in the previous tour. So that's the area with the gigantic Herodian stones. That's the filled up Warren's Gate. So we are here, and now we are. So this is where the cisterns are, and now, well, approximately here. So obviously, this is exactly where, atop of it right now, the Muslim quarter is. We're just in the times where the Muslim quarter is, well, not not there. Let's put it like this. And this is where the terrain changes, right? And actually, this is where very soon we are going to see more of the bedrock exposed. We'll see what it looks like. There you go. So you see bedrock. Why? All of a sudden, the stones ended, and you have a bedrock. That's because of the natural elevation. That's because of the terrain. It's the rocky area. That's it. So it wasn't flat. And when Herod was extending the Temple Mount, he realized that from the northern side that there was an elevation. So he just didn't have to put the stones, and he put the bedrock. However, it's interesting that they even tried to make the cuts and the chisel the bedrock, so and give the bedrock the same rectangular outline, so it would just imitate the stones of the Temple Mount. That's interesting. And this wall from the left, it's concrete. That's from like couple of dozen years ago, um, when they were um, arranging the place into a visitor center, basically. So for the museum purposes, this is it. Another system on our way from the Hasmonean times, or the Hashmonean or Hasmonean period. This is the 2nd century BCE. This is the times of the Maccabean wars and everything. So the Hellenistic period. And so this is, let's say, 2nd century BCE. We are not going into much of the details here. We'll definitely speak more of different periods as well, because when I'm talking about the walls, there's no other way. I can definitely refer to different periods and provide you the timelines as much as possible. So we will do that. But as of now, we are not stopping on these details. And here used to be the guardrail because here was the big water storage, and this stone was placed here to make sure people would not be falling down in the cistern where the water was collected. Because it was open air. There was no ceiling above it. It was a big open air system. So this area, all of this used to be exposed. It used to be on the ground, obviously, but that's not the point nowadays, because above it, the Muslim city is now, the Muslim quarter, sorry. Herodian Street. Hmm, this must sound familiar. Well, again, there you go. So this is the area of well, like this. This is the Davidson Center, right? And this is exactly here we were able to walk on the ground level from the times of Herod. And here, this street would go all along the walls of, well, the Western Wall. It was so called the Wall Street of the of that time, of the 1st century BCE, 1st century CE. It was the Wall Street, exactly. So this Wall Street is exposed here because of the big clean out that was carried out, and after the 6 Day War, after the 1967 war, when the Israel Defense Force and Israel managed to break the Jordanian siege of this area of Jerusalem. And this is when the big cleaning started. Exactly after that, also the Western Wall was rearranged into the big open air synagogue. We spoke about it as well. So we move on. So basically, the area where we are now, which is called Herodian Street, that's exactly the same road, but we just didn't have a chance to walk the same road over here. We are at a higher level, but here, that's exactly where we are. So this area, this section was exposed to us by archaeologists. And we see the same pavement that we saw in the Davidson Center, the same pavement that Jesus walked, and many, many other pilgrims and people who lived in Jerusalem every day. There you go. That's here. We are approaching the corner of the western wall, not northwestern wall of the Temple Mount. So, there you go. That's where we are. And because of the natural terrain, you see that the road here goes down the hill. So naturally, the biggest stones would be here, and definitely more. I think after that we're going to have a Q&A, and then we'll go on with the story. So this is I zoomed it in. Sorry for the quality. Well, it's the best that we have. We will refer to these shortly. This is done here for a reason. It's not just a glitch or just a scratch. So that's approximately where we are, the Herodian street, the paved street over here. Paved Herodian at the same time, 1st century BCE, because the pavement was made exactly the same time the Temple Mount was rebuilt. Again, you see the bedrock here, right? This is the bedrock and the attempts to cut out. Okay, well, to imitate the design of the Herodian stones. But what is this? So what are these stones? They're definitely not the Herodian time stones. This is not. These stones are here from the Mamluk period, which is, let's say, 13th century Common Era. Well, when the Mamluks came, which we refer to it as the second Muslim period. The first Muslim period is the Fatimids, and that's from the 7th century and up until the 11th century when the Crusaders came in 1099. So what the Mamluks did, they basically, again, covered large areas up, and they obviously built atop what had been built before. The Crusaders will be building something that had been built before them. So with the Muslim period. So what we have, this is the Mamluk period. And above it, on top of it, right now, the current Muslim quarter rests. So yeah, technically speaking, the entire city, the entire area is really on your head. And at this point, you might feel a bit uncomfortable just realizing all that, but that's okay. You actually, there's a lot of air, there's a lot of ventilation. So, and if you've been to the Western Wall tunnels, I'm sure I'm sure you would agree with me. But yeah, when you realize where you are, when you pinpoint yourself, when you pinpoint the places, there are always a lot of this visual aids everywhere. But I clearly recommend to go with a guide, because this is when you get really a better understanding. And this is where the street ends. Why the street ends here, we don't know for sure. We know that once Herod died, the construction was put on hold. Later on, with his descendants, the construction would continue, but in a different way and for different purposes. But not for long as well, because we know that in 70 AD, there would be a big destruction, a big fire of the temple, and then the destruction of the city itself. So there wasn't really much work to do. So maybe the construction ended with the death of Herod the Great, which happened in the approximately year 4, approximately BCE. But here is a question, because it's not entirely clear when that happened. What we see here, it's a bit difficult to understand, but so you see the stones, they're there's kind of big cuts over here and here. So this is the quarry. As I said, there have been found multiple quarries around the vicinity of the Temple Mount, because they wouldn't be, well, it just didn't make sense to bring stones from the other end of Jerusalem. Heavy stones for the construction. Of course, they would be found somewhere as close as possible to the construction site. And there was a quarry just here. Um, that's not the quarry for the big stones. That's still a question. But mm, there's no real understanding of how these stones ended up where they are. But here you can see this is the unfinished cutting of the stones, and you see the rectangular shape, very well. I would say you can see the really good mason work here. They just didn't get to finish it. Obviously, they would be given also the final polishing and everything afterwards. So this is just the preliminary work, and that's where they just stopped. That's it. So, and that's why the street also stopped. That's it, the end of the street. But this is not the end of the tunnels. So also they discovered very interesting area. So the walls of the Temple Mount are still there, but this just was not. This is just not the street. You need to go. You need to go up the steps a little bit, and you find yourself in a very different surrounding, in a very different area. It looks a bit like, I don't know, um, like you're somewhere else, maybe north. Maybe you walk somewhere, or maybe you walk somewhere in the Shvela, in the Beit Guvrin, or in the somewhere in the north in the Galilee. It doesn't look like Jerusalem, but actually you are walking in the water tunnel, in the Hasmonean period water tunnel or aqueduct. That's what is written here. This is the aqueduct from the 2nd century BCE, the Hasmonean period. And it's quite impressive. It's well, the aqueduct was essential, obviously, and the Gihon spring was not enough. So definitely there would be other water sources added. There would be several water sources that eventually, with a system of aqueducts, they would be bringing water to Jerusalem. Definitely, that's well, the one of the water sources would be somewhat 20 kilometers away, uh, and there would be 30 kilometers away. So we do it in kilometers. So as I said, it's about 5 miles away, 10 miles away. There would be eventually several aqueducts bringing water to Jerusalem, because one Gihon spring was definitely not enough. And so, but this is what we have from the 2nd century BCE, and it ends up with the big pool where the water would be accumulated. There is still water here. It's much clearer now. Exactly this video, that's I think 2 years ago. And from the other side, if you turn around, there will be the continuation of that pool, and it's called the Struthian pool. That's one of the pools that would be in use since the Hashmonean time, and then through that channel, the water would be gathered and would be used in the Roman times and the Herodian times as well. So it will hold the water. This is from about a year ago. There was also massive reconstruction going on. There used to be, when it was first there, like 2.5 years ago or so, it was like big metal beams supporting the ceiling. They were trying to arrange everything for the visitors, and that was the chaos. That's what it looks nowadays. Obviously, you wouldn't be drinking this water, you wouldn't be touching this water, but it still holds the water 2,000 years later. This is, I find it absolutely incredible. So let's walk around a little bit. That's what it looks like. This is the sort of the rendering, the recreation of what the old city looked and the Temple Mount looked at times of Herod the Great. So this is the Struthian pool. So this area used to be exposed. So this pool was exposed, and this would be it would be collecting the rainwater too. Now it's all covered, and as you can see, and I will be showing you that the stones are of a different size. So these are not the stones from the Roman time. These are stones of a much later period, mostly Mamluk period, but I would say it's a combination. Yes, so there you go again. This is the Western Wall, right? That's the temple. That's the area, and that's the paved street, right? That's the Robinson's Arch. That's the Wilson's Arch. That's the Warren's Gate. Obviously, none of this was had this name in the Herodian times, as you understand, and that's where we are. Well, that's where we are now. Let's move on. And this is the northern wall. So we are basically at the corner or around the corner of the northern wall of the Temple Mount. Now you need to go up the steps, and you will enter, and you will come up on the surface in the Muslim Quarter, obviously. And not just somewhere in the Muslim Quarter, but you will find yourself on the Via Dolorosa, where of the very, very first station of Via Dolorosa, the first station out of the 14. And this is the stage that marks the condemnation of Jesus by Pontius Pilate. And so this will be the first station. And the issues with the first stations are that there is no such a place. It was not mentioned which place this could be, where the condemnation could have happened, but most likely it had to be a palace, right? It had to be the place where that Pontius Pilate resided, and this had to be an Antonia fortress. The question is, what is the Antonia fortress? And that's the question. So there is no Antonia fortress anymore. There are several versions. There are two versions where Antonia fortress could have been built, but most historians and archaeologists and even architects assume that the Antonia fortress built by Herod the Great was built from the north. Why from the north? That's a good question. So if you remember, hold on a second. I think I'm gonna need let's first take a look at this and we'll go back. As you remember, at some point along the western wall, the terrain changes and there is a slight, there isn't an elevation. That's exactly when Herod didn't have to put the big stones, and he just cut out the rectangular designs to imitate the walls, the stones. So technically speaking, the walls were much lower, and this made access to the Temple Mount a lot easier for potential enemies, because actually the heights of the walls of Jerusalem was about like 20 floors, around like a 20 floor building, 20 floors high building. But here it's way lower. And it would be unlogical to let's just put yourself in his shoes, in Herod's shoes. Well, maybe it's a bad advice because he was mental. But anyway, and it would be logical to build an extra fortification where it is most vulnerable. So the fortress and this is the model in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. There is the model of the Second Temple period city, very big, quite detailed. It's almost accurate. Obviously, there are a lot more findings have been made over the course of the past decade, and this model definitely needs some changing, but in a nutshell, it's very good. And that's what we have. So this is the western wall over there. This is the territory of the temple, Temple Mount, in the temple and the Holy of Holies. And this is the Antonia fortress. The Struthian pool is a little bit over there, and that's the fortress. So we assume that that's where exactly Jesus was condemned by the Sanhedrin, by Pontius Pilate, and that's what the first station marks. However, there's no Antonia fortress anymore. Why Antonia, by the way? Well, because when Herod started rebuilding the Temple Mount, it was the times when Mark Antony was ruling the Roman Empire. So Herod called it after Mark Antony because he was loyal to him. And after that, as you know, when Augustus came to power, Herod had to save himself, and he quite quickly built a big port city called Caesarea, which is one of my most favorite places in the entire Israel. So, yeah, I would say he was very good at namings. Anyway, so that's the name, and so this is the territory of the temple, right? And so this looks like this all was the Antonia fortress, and these were the steps and the courtyard of the Antonia fortress. And it is believed that exactly here on these steps, the condemnation happened. And this is the praetorium, right? So praetorium, the basically the residence of Pontius Pilate. But again, this is just the rendering, and you see that this is 1998, but largely I would say the layout is pretty much the same. It gives us just some understanding. But we're looking at it from the eastern wall, as you can see, right? So behind our back now would be the Mount of Olives. Anyway, let's go back to where we were just a minute away. Yeah, so that's where we exit. That's where we come up on the surface, and that's where the Via Dolorosa begins. Here. So what we have here now, Muslim quarter, and that is totally fine that the Christian sites are in the Muslim quarter, because when Jesus lived there was no Muslim quarter, there was no Islam, and there was no Christianity, there were no Christian quarters, there were no Armenian quarters, there was just the Jewish town of Jewish city of Jerusalem. So, but what we have there now, the school for boys, Elumbria, it's called, and it's technically speaking, it is accessible to tourists, but you need to arrange it in advance and at only certain hours when there are no kids at school. I've never been on the territory of Elumbria, but but there are photographs, obviously, there are a bunch of photographs, and many tourists have been here, so I just never got the chance to be there, but it's doable. I even know how to arrange that, so it's not going to be an issue provided that you agree in advance. So this is just another view. And luckily here there are people in the photo that you can see how big the model is. And you can go around it and you can see everything. So there was also an idea that the Antonia fortress could have been somewhere not far from the Jaffa Gate, but it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So that's why I would stick to this version myself. And yeah, so this is the view of the model from the opposite side. This is exactly from the western wall. You see this. This is the Robinson's Arch, right? The paved street. This is the corner. That's where the trumpets would be, right? That's the Wilson's Arch. That's the big exposed stone. So then we go, and then you see that the terrain changes and everything. So, and the Antonia Fortress. And from there, somewhere we enter the Muslim quarter. So what we see in the courtyard of the Alumbria school, that's quite interesting. They have a big courtyard, and well, this is just some artworks describing the condemnation of Jesus and Pontius Pilate, and then the Sanhedrin. I'm not even going into details here. We also discussed it in details when we did the tours of Via Dolorosa. The recordings are available to my sponsors, and if it's just a couple of tours you want to see, you can always contact me. This is the courtyard. This is the photo from the internet, and the dimensions actually fit the the size of the courtyard of the Praetorium in the Antonia fortress. So the Antonia is the name from Herod times, and Pontius Pilate, who would become the in charge of Jerusalem, again appointed by the Roman Empire. So the prosecutor, so he would be the procurator. Yeah, he would have his Praetorium in the Antonia fortress. And the dimensions of the courtyard actually fit the dimensions of the, the the courtyard of the Praetorium. And uh, this is the photo, the view from the window of the Alumbria school. You see the Dome of the Rock quite clearly. The view is incredible. And uh, imagine if any excavations could have been carried here, what what how many like priceless items, how much of the precious materials um, could have been found there. That's quite incredible. So this is which is built. This is where the Antonia Fortress and the Praetorium is believed to have been, but unless any surveys or any excavations are carried out there, it's impossible to tell, obviously. So it is what it is. And we also, this is just, um, we, this is from the tours we did on the Via Dolorosa, where we also had to go underground in order to see the ground level at times of Jesus. And this is all along the same street. And this exactly underneath the street where we are now, that's where we believe the same paved street is. That's the same paved street. Well, this is it. Let's have a Q&A, and I hope Sissy has been able to rejoin. And Sissy, if you're here, let me see. You can always contact me, and I will send you the recording. And I hope this won't happen again. This has happened a couple of times when, for some reason, I'm not sure. I'm still don't know how it happened. You were not able, a couple of viewers were not able to see the video, but in most cases, luckily, it was okay. So I hope the connectivity was more or less fine and the sound is more or less okay. Let me know if you have any questions. So next time we'll start. I'm not sure how many episodes they're going to be, but I'm hoping for quite a detailed tours of walls and gates of Jerusalem, Old City. We'll be talking more about the Temple Mount for sure. Um, and once I am in Jerusalem, I will be able to live stream more. But it's also a bit of an issue of live streaming in the Old City. The connectivity there is not really that good. But we'll see. We'll see. So I'll just share a couple of links. So the next episode is already scheduled, and I will try to stick to one and the same schedule, or one and the same at the same time for your convenience. That's very good. Thank you, Dolly. So June 15, same time, on Sunday, the next episodes of Walls and Gates of Jerusalem. Part one, but I can't promise how many episodes there will be. I don't know. I tend to get carried away and sometimes dive in some details or some speculations. But I'll try to at least. So my idea is to build up sort of a timeline and understanding of how the city's layout would change. And I'm also providing here the links, first of all, to my website where you can find the schedule, the most accurate schedule, and also the links for the recordings. I haven't been able to share many recordings as of this weekend, but the 3 recordings of the live streams from my YouTube are available on my YouTube channel. Earlier this week, we did a live stream in Signahi in Georgia, the city of love and wine, and we even got to climb the walls in the medieval dungeons. So we went atop the medieval dungeons, and incredible that the signal was always there in the medieval dungeon. And then yesterday I did a live stream on the vintage market, and today I did the live stream from the cheese market. Well, it's been a very busy weekend. The next weekend there will be another market, the crafts market in Tbilisi. You know, I'll be there whenever there is a market. I am there. And there will be more tours on St. Petersburg. The White Nice River Cruise in St. Petersburg is going to be the same time Saturday as I usually do for virtual tours. And yeah, there's more to come. And I love your detail and how and the explanation of everything gives me chills thinking that Jesus had his disciples walked on these paving stones. Yes, there's no way he didn't. Absolutely, Mary. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's very sweet of you. Thank you, everyone, for your interest in what I show and what I do. And if you have any questions with regards to accessing the videos, staying updated about the tours I schedule, the best way is to subscribe to my newsletter. And on my website, anayaguide.com, you can easily see this button. Subscribe to my newsletter, and you just follow the guidelines, which is very simple. It takes a minute of your time. I would appreciate your support. You know, all my tours are free to join, but tipping is encouraged and it's important. So you can support me by either buying me coffees or sending me a PayPal donation. Thank you, everyone, for your interest and support. It really means the world to me. And thanks to you, I am able to stay in my profession and not to lose and forget, because you either use it or you lose it. And thanks to you, I think I'm keeping my brains in a good shape. Living in Georgia, however, is not helping me keeping myself in the shape and my waistline because of all these gorgeous foods and wine and cheese and bread. But I'm staying strong. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you next weekend for at least 7 virtuals of the 3 countries. Bye bye.